You're touching in an area that I think is very important today with respect to the conversion to the digital environment. And as I look at business process, typically, based on my work experience for some large organizations in knowledge work, all of the business process, the workflows associated with that, they were all, I would say, manual or analog almost. I mean, you can use that acronym, right? They would be set up, they would be sort of circulated, agreed to, and then they were put on a shelf and nobody ever went back, okay? There would be some measurement of quality of work and things like that, but really not very interactive and not actively managed. They were shelf documents. In the new AI environment, for sure, you're going to have a digital business process. All business processes are going to have to be digital. And of course, the people who are really gung-ho AI, like Accenture, for example, if you listen to Julie Sweet, you take your business process, throw it out, and recreate around the digital portion that you're going to start with, and then build around that. So you're basically building from the AI out, a totally different approach. Why has there not been as much adoption of that strategy? I don't see it very often. And I think there's a lot of the bigger organizations are holding back and the smaller ones don't have any interest. But it's really the key to creating the value measures for managers, senior managers, who are used to seeing people in front of them. That's really the only way they can manage. They have no data on how people are really doing. But they would have that in the digital environment, certainly, if we go that way. Help us understand why there's pushback there and what could be done to more actively encourage that in growing companies.
So to take this systems conversation from philosophical to tactical and practical, one of the elements that I see in every high-performing distributed organization is treating knowledge like a product. There's a centralized knowledge base that enables decentralized decisions. And most companies actually have a product leader that manages that just like they would something else like security or communication. It means a lot to their organization. The issue is, for the past 5 years or so, it has been very manual to maintain a knowledge base. Some companies might have wikis, but those are mostly static and unchanging. I'm talking about a living, breathing operating model where everyone in the company looks to that in order to find information to move their individual work forward. Now compare this or contrast this to an in-office company. The office is the central hub.
Right.
And what it does is it gives you a great excuse to not be great at centralizing knowledge. If you think about a company as an operating system, millions of lines of code, there are massive gaps in the code base, and they're all centered around communication. The office is a patch for these massive voids of code. And so when you're working in a company, you're running the OS, and you hit a void, you simply go to the office. And somehow in that labyrinth, you can find the right person that can put together the right patchwork to actually get you across that chasm, and then you can continue to run the system. But the office doesn't actually solve the underlying issue. It doesn't actually write new code. The void is always there. You just become dependent on retreating to the office in order to continually cross that chasm. A distributed company says, no, if we find a gap in the OS, we're going to figure out what systems and what cultural expectations we need around that to actually patch the code. We're not just going to go into the office to solve this problem. Now, let's shift that over to the conversation on AI. Jonathan Siddharth, he's the founder and CEO of an organization called Turing, recently did an interview with 20 VC. And in it, he talked about how he works with clients to help them embrace the AI revolution. And he said this phrase that really stuck with me. It's the First Mile Schlep. He said, leaders come to Turing and they say, we have these grand visions of all of the things we want to do with AI. And they say, great, you're going to need an immense amount of expertly documented data for us to work with. AI needs a phenomenal underlying data set if it is to do anything magical.
Right.
And he said, what happens is they walk into most companies and they say, none of your processes are documented. There is no standardized project management tool, even across your functions. The first mile schlep is, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to rapidly build out that knowledge base, rapidly codify your culture, your values, your operating principles, rapidly codify how work actually happens, how we communicate, what tools we use, what tools we don't use, how we engage internally and externally. You're essentially writing the operating manual. Because if you ever want to actually leverage AI, that is the prerequisite.